Piskadlo. We are back to you after a
Brief hiatus.
brief hiatus, 3, 4 months, while the elections took place, and now that the primaries are over, we decided to kick back on. We're under a new name, one that I think is a little more appropriate, called the Battle Station. What do you think?
I like it. It's truth or consequences, a little bit weak.
Yeah, I mean, especially when you can have your own truth, but truth is the truth. Truth or consequences was a little long, and quite honestly, you kind of have to be over 50 years old to get what that really means, because there was an old show called that. But we truly are in a battle. I mean, look, wow. I mean, what do you even talk about, Roy? I mean, where do you start? There's so much.
Well,
With
it was
the primaries
the
here.
primaries. We had the primaries. You had your primary. We'd need to cover that a little bit. But we also, the primary in general across the state, particularly for things like Trent Stagg's race, Phil Lyman's race with Cox, and you know, I guess you would say Frank Mylar.
Yeah.
Your race, a bunch of other races. It's very interesting to see. There is I'm not sure if it's a war within the Republican Party or if there's a lot of Democrats registered as Republicans. I mean, it's really strange, the outcome.
I say maybe a little of both. Maybe people don't know what the definition of Republican even is anymore here, in particularly Utah. And I know for a fact, doing canvassing, that I have people come right out and tell me that they're registered as Republicans, and they're very liberal, they're Democrats, and they openly admit that it's the only way they have a voice here in Utah is to register as a Republican. And we see the consequences in the primary elections.
Well, I did a bunch of canvassing for you, walking around in House District 41, and I saw the same thing. I mean, you walk up, the list that we had was all registered Republicans, because that's all who could participate in the in the primary. And what they were doing was, I would go walk up there, and they would have Black Lives Matter flags, and
Yes,
flags on gun control
flags,
and transgender flag, the rainbow flag and so on. And you would go up and talk to them, and they were nothing but hostile. And it wasn't about, even having, bringing up any particular subject. They would just
get the hell off my porch.
Yeah, partly.
I had some of that. And,
yeah.
I talked to, I in part did 20-ish precincts, not all of every one, but covered a lot of ground. And you literally get to where you can recognize a conservative's house based on what's outside.
Right.
In a lot of cases.
Well, the American flag is a dead giveaway.
It really is. And it's sad that Democrats don't believe, they fly the transgender flag over the American flag, many of them. And I hate to generalize, but it literally gets to where you look at the list, it has a Republican listed at that house, and you say, I'm not going to go to that house because it has a Black Lives Matter sign in the front yard, or even in some cases based on the kind of car they drive.
Yeah, that's true. Like if you see a Tesla parked in the driveway, you go,
Yeah. And more often than not, I think, if you would knock on that door, and I got to where I didn't knock on those doors anymore because it was a waste of time, or even put any kind of literature on their doorstep, because in my case, being an America First candidate, I knew it would be an instant vote against me.
I actually went and did that anyway. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I did that with your literature too. And
you did, Roy.
Yeah.
No wonder I lost.
Yeah, I know. Well, I did it because I wanted to actually engage with them. I really would like to understand how these people think. Like what, like how, particularly after the debate just a little while ago, a lot of these people, probably some of the people that are yelling at you to get off their porch or flying these transgender flags and so on, were just shocked about Biden's condition. And I wonder if they were truly shocked or if they're just so low information. I mean,
Well, and wrong information.
Biden's condition for, before, the 2020 election in 2019, people were saying he's going downhill. And they were comparing videos of him, several years ago, even when he was as vice president, to, when he was, quote, campaigning from his basement.
Yeah.
It just, he wasn't the same person.
No.
And yet these people are just,
they literally act shocked, don't they? And it's amazing. I have to believe that they're just watching, MSNBC and CNN, and that's it. And because the media is complicit in this, and I don't know why.
Well, do you think the media itself knew what was going on with Biden and therefore just lied?
Yes, I do. I do think that.
I think that as well, because I don't think these people are.
Well, they're not stupid. Dumb, and they're there in many cases with him, and they see the blunders firsthand. They see the cognitive decline firsthand, and they lie, just like his press secretary, Pierre. They just lie through their teeth.
It's interesting too, because I think it's not just only happening here in Utah, although I think it is very strong here in Utah. But if you've watched any of the RNC just in the last couple of days, I mean, Nikki Haley gave a speech and she was booed, and Mitch McConnell gave a speech and he was really booed. I mean, it was unbelievable how many people were there. And before we kind of went on a little bit of a hiatus, we were at the state convention, you and I, and it was raucous. I mean, and when Cox got up there, he was booed, and Phil Lyman kicked his butt. Just kicked his butt, and
as
it was
did
like,
Staggs.
As did Staggs
over Curtis, did Mylar over Derek Brown,
right?
And yet everything turned out totally the opposite in the primaries.
Right. And
not one of what I would consider an America First candidate
on the statewide basis.
On a statewide basis, one. Not one of them won.
And that, yes. And I just wonder, well, one, SB 54 needs to get removed. SB 54, for our listeners who aren't really familiar, SB 54 basically allows somebody who is not elected at convention, either in their county convention or in their state convention, to gather signatures and then to put them, and then to force a primary, which is what you went through, Steve. And what used to be that SB 54, prior to SB 54, at either state convention or county convention, whatever the case may be, depending on the race, if somebody went through that convention process and they won a majority of the votes, they didn't have to win by, they just had to win by 50.1%. They were the GOP, the Republican nominee, and they were on the ballot, and they didn't have to go through a separate process.
No primary.
No primary at all.
So let me ask you a question about that, Roy, just so everybody understands. So now I forgot the question I was going to ask. What was it? It had to do with SB 54. We're talking about.
It was SB 54, and SB 54 came in after Mike Lee, knocked out
Bob Bennett.
Bob Bennett. And it really is, in my mind, a hijacking. It's a hijacking of both parties, both the Democrat Party as well as the Republican Party.
Well, here's the question
Mhm.
that I recall. So, why is a private entity, which the Republican Party is, and I believe the Democratic Party also, is a private entity, a non-government entity.
Mhm.
Why are we beholden to the state legislature and the rules they make for how our candidates are going to get on the election? If it were truly a private entity, wouldn't we have our Republican nominee through convention? And if they want to go ahead with the signatures, that person that got signatures would not be a Republican. I mean,
Not necessarily. I
why
mean,
is it
people like
okay?
Mike Lee got signatures, for example.
Why is it okay for the state legislature to dictate to a private entity how their nominee should be brought forth? Now, I know that they do it through convention, and yet through the state system with signatures, it could be argued that we're also bringing additional Republicans to the table. Why do they have the right to do that? So it's essentially diminishing the Republican Party.
It's actually, I call it hijacking the Republican brand.
Yeah, and Democrat, if you want to argue that.
It is
too.
Democrat too, but just for our listeners, before I answer that question, and again, I only learned this through my affiliation with the Republican Party, which we're trying to get Steve to step up here, which we'll talk about as well.
I might.
I think he's perfect for it, because we've got to actually fight this.
That's a conversation for another day,
yeah,
maybe.
But because we need many people to step up, not just you but our all our millions of listeners.
I agree. Let's answer that question and then come back to that, because
that question, my understanding is that the state Republican Party takes money. If everybody remembers, when you go to vote, you can check a box and you can have $1 donated to the party of your choice. So, we can actually want to announce the channel right now.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay,
I'll do it. This is KMMU Radio Podcast. We have to remember that they're our boss, and that the man behind the curtain, Dwayne, is reminding us that we need to tell everyone that you can call in. It's a live call-in show. That number is 385-899-2134. 385-899-2134. You can also listen to us by going to kmmu.org. We're also on Twitter. We can just do a search on Twitter. We're on Rumble. Rumble at KMMU. You'll be able to find us.
YouTube.
And YouTube as well, KMMU. So we're growing. We're bringing diverse. It's actually, to be honest with you, conservative in nature, but
it's a diverse conservative spectrum.
There you go. That's a lot like the Republican Party, which, to me, the Republican Party in this state, I can't speak for other states, it's not even, it's the diverse views within the party are so great that it's really two parties, in my view. The establishment here is not in line with their thinking with
agree with you
with the what I call America First candidates.
Actually, the Republican values that are published, and that's another thread to this conversation.
Right.
Coming back to answering your question, why is it that the Republican Party can't just go through the caucus system? Some states have that, where you elect your precinct chairs and your delegates, and then the delegates have to go and meet all the candidates for each district, and then they have to vote, be face to face right there and vote for the Republican candidate of their choice. If the candidates don't get to 50.1%, then they knock off the two lesser candidates, and then they keep going until they get to a plurality and a majority, excuse me. Now, my understanding is if you remember, when you go and vote, you can actually check a box and say you want the state to donate $1 to the party of your choice. Okay, and everybody checks it, of course, because why not? It's like it's your tax dollars, and they're giving the money back to you. Once they do that, the state has, just like in any other thing, the state puts strings attached to it. They say, you must follow SB 54 if we're going to give you the money. And I know that there's been some lawsuits in, the state by, I think Chris was trying to get it changed.
That'd be Chris Knoll.
And Chris Knoll.
Salt Lake County GOP chair.
Right. And he was trying to get it changed, and the court said no, because, basically because you're getting money for it.
So,
and what the state should do is change its bylaws and say, we're going to refuse that money. We don't want any money from
not the state, but the Republican Party.
The Republican Party has to say, I don't want any money.
But what happens if the people registering keep checking that box?
The Republican Party has to change its bylaws, because they say, if I am going to, I'm going to take this money, then that obligates them to follow SB 54. We have to get out of. We just have to say we just don't need
unchained from them.
Well, it's like, when I spoke to people like Chris Kimball, who was our local school board Republican candidate that you and I were both supporting.
Yeah.
She was telling me that the count, or the state, gets about 2 or 3% of its total budget from the federal government for the board of education.
So they're beholden to them,
and it comes with a huge list of strings attached. Things like having to teach
DEI,
core curriculum,
SEL,
and probably DEI and SEL and all this other stuff. And you could say, well, I'm not going to do it. You keep your money. It's only 3 or 4% of the total budget.
Florida did it.
Florida did it.
Yeah, they did.
We need to do it here.
We really
as
do.
well. We really do, and because we don't need the money. I mean, the budget for our state, for the school board, is 3 or 4 billion. I mean, it's a big number.
It's actually 8.
It's 8 billion total.
Yeah.
Wow.
For the state, it's the number one expense on the line item budget for the state, education. So I know that, having reviewed the budget as a candidate.
So coming back to this, what we should be doing is rejecting the party, that is rejecting the money. The Democrat Party, or any party, could make that decision and not get money, and therefore not be beholden to the state and be required to hold a primary.
And herein lies the problem. We have people that are not true conservatives registered as Republicans. So to even vote the bylaws change would be difficult, because you have so many people already in the party that would vote contrary to that.
I think what you would find, you would find a lot of people going against it. And that the state convention that you saw there, okay, is, I think, indicative of the type of direction that people would go.
Maybe.
Because those people that volunteer to be delegates, like in the room that we were in after, at the...
Yeah.
I think there's enough people that, the people that show up,
maybe
the people that show up on the weekends, the people that show up, to be state delegates or county delegates. Most of them, not saying all of them, but a good portion of them are the ones that are very active in the party.
Well, I would agree to that with the caveat that the Democrats or liberals that infiltrate the party are equally as motivated. And I want to give a couple examples. When I was running and going through the process of meeting with delegates, you had about between 5 and 6 weeks between the delegates getting elected at caucus and convention. And in my case, it was county convention. And I had set up, even before the caucus night, times to meet at libraries with delegates.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd set up 3 a week for 5 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot. And sometimes
It
even
is.
more, 15 to 20 meetings. In the end, and there was there was actually 150 roughly delegates for Senate District 15. I bet I didn't meet with 35 delegates total. And that's after repeatedly
Trying to get them.
emails, texts, over and over
and
again.
I'm guessing that a lot of those delegates were already in the bag, either for Amber Shield or Scott Cuthbertson,
Well, and also
like family members and things.
a lot of them, yeah. People actually go around and recruit people to run as delegates so they can win at convention. So you do have some of that, but not 70%. That would be impossible to get to that many precincts and get that many delegates to run and actually win. I guess my point is it was really frustrating as a candidate that I felt like those that I was able to meet with one-on-one, I did pretty well with. And those that the only time they ever heard me talk was at this 3-minute speech you get at convention. And by then they'd already decided. And by the way, out of that 150 number of delegates, there was only 104 that showed up at convention.
I think part of the problem is that, first of all, Chris Null has always said that we do have a big problem with people signing up to be delegates and then not showing up.
Yeah, that happened. It really
It
did.
happened a lot. And people would say, oh, I didn't realize I had to be out of town or whatever. And you can replace yourself as a delegate, but you have to do it within a certain period
And
of time.
they just don't. They don't take the
A
initiative.
lot of them don't. Okay.
I had people, Roy, that openly supported me and missed convention because their kid had a soccer game.
Right.
They literally told me that.
Uh-huh.
That was a husband and wife team, and I know them personally. And I said, well, where's so-and-so? So, oh, well, our son has a soccer game today. It's like, you want to say, well, I want to wring your neck because this is so important to me. I spent invested so much time. Every single vote
counts,
mattered.
Mm-hmm.
And then to not be able to make arrangements one time for one game. And I get it. I mean, I was the biggest fan of my kids when they were playing. I didn't want to miss a game.
But then you shouldn't step up. You
shouldn't do it. You just shouldn't do it.
So you are listening to kmmu.org. This is Steve and Roy. I'm Roy.
And I'm Steve.
And our show is called Battle Station. We are streaming simultaneously on Rumble, X, and YouTube. And we're going to be broadcasting every Wednesday from 4 to 6. We're back on it.
We're going to build and we're going to tell the truth here. And we're going to get pissed off because I already am. And Roy maybe won't get as pissed off as me, but he gets pissed off too. I'm really pissed off.
So
I'm really pissed off at the
cut-
system and this country.
I think though, what I do think has happened since SB 54 and people recognize that the caucus system doesn't matter as much because
I would
you've
argue
got
it
that
hardly
primary-
matters at all. I mean, every single one of the real conservative candidates that we knew and supported lost.
on a statewide basis. However, within Salt Lake County, those people that won outright, won the, what was it, 70%, whatever
Mhm.
I think it was 60% of the threshold, and
In Salt Lake
advanced
County.
in Salt Lake County, only one person who met that criteria within Salt Lake County didn't advance.
And what is that number?
The total number of people that did that, those were the people on that Bang the Drum flyer that they were, remember how Chris Null, for everybody, Chris Null spent money on putting out
Yeah,
everybody.
I was on
and
that
saying,
flyer, and by the way, so were you.
right, but there were people on that flyer that said the convention nominee, and you and Scott Cuthbertson both advanced.
Right, because
So
of the 60-40.
He couldn't say, he didn't put Amber Shield on there, but he also didn't say which one was the Republican nominee. The point that Chris was making was the people who were the outright Republican nominee that went through, given the existing rules, everyone except for Chris Kimball won their primary.
Mhm.
Okay. And that, because Chris is getting a lot of pressure to just pull the plug on the whole system and saying, we should just get rid of Cox is saying that. Let's get rid of the whole system.
Well, yeah, he wants more control.
And he wants more control. And my view is if we went back all the way back to where the nominee is selected at the convention, either the county convention or the state convention, based upon those people that are delegates that are going to show up and miss soccer games and all this other stuff, are going to be the ones that are going to be the nominees. And if that is the nominee, and there's no second bite at the apple, then I think that you're going to end up with more people showing up at the convention. That's part one. Part two, we have serial offenders in this process. So when somebody says, I'm going to get elected, what Chris has been doing is trying to find people that will, identify those people and say, hey, look, you didn't attend the convention last time. You didn't attend the, and yet you're a delegate. Again, we don't want to waste a vote. We're not going to, even though you want it.
To my knowledge, though, how do they identify those people? Because I don't ever see them signing it. Well, they do sign in. I guess
they do sign in.
They do sign in.
We know who participated in the convention.
Yeah.
And we know who was a delegate. And when they don't show up, and they don't show up at the quarterly meetings, they get flushed after a while.
Well, they should.
And Chris has been trying to, under his tenure as the Salt Lake County chair, what he's been trying to do is actually enforce some of these rules, change the bylaws. For example, we had a big bylaw debate where he said, if you don't show up more than this many times or more, then we're going to replace you and you don't have a say in it. We're going to go find another person.
Yeah, and I think that should be like that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's move off of this right now. There's so much to talk about. I think that the comment was made by Cox, and it really kind of said it all to me, Roy. He did a CNN interview shortly after the primary, and he basically said two things. He said, I'm not a Trump supporter. And he said, we here in Utah are a different kind of Republican. And that's really true, isn't it? They're a different kind of Republican.
I think it goes back to what you were saying, which is there are a lot of Democrats that register as Republicans
Yeah.
only so they can participate in the primary itself, the one that's run by the
Right.
state.
Yeah.
They're not trying to participate, as many of them participate in the caucus process, because quite honestly, it's a lot of time. You have to put a lot of time into it to make it worthwhile. And I think that real Republicans would, because you do have to make a bit of a sacrifice. You have to actually show up.
Yeah, that's true. But then I look at the primary, and
But the
let's
primary,
take the cheating. We're obviously big believers that there's
significant cheating.
significant cheating in our elections, particularly in the primary
Mhm.
here in Utah. And because whoever makes it through as a Republican in the primary, 90% of the time goes on to win the general election. We are electing liberals. Cox is a liberal.
Mhm.
He is. We are electing people that believe in diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is an acronym or the DEI acronym that doesn't mean that at all. It's division,
It's Marxism.
it's Marxism, and SEL, transgender issues, sex change issues, where we've had to override our governor. Thank God that the legislature did that when he vetoed one bill 2 years ago now that is clearly a liberal stance on the sexuality and gender issues that, and he's our governor.
You know, I
Why,
think
how does a conservative state do that?
it goes back to what you described before, which is uh, you during the primary, it's not a caucus system, or it can be, but only in really extreme situations. But it's the signature gathering process gets around that. That tends to favor the candidates with the most money, and quite honestly, those tend to are by and large the most liberal. And,
well, and the
they're
establishment
the
here,
ones,
in this
and
case.
yeah, and that's how they get reelected, is they put a lot of money into it, a lot more money than you and I have to put into our races. And I mean,
As an example of that, just to cite my example, I put about 8,000 in this time, and my opponents, Cuthbertson and Shield, were in the $100,000 each range.
Cuthbertson ended up all the way up at 100. I thought he was
It was
around
just-
60, 65.
No, it was about 70.
Okay,
And
70.
Amber was actually over 100. So that's significant money. And I think,
Well, and also to put it in perspective, okay, so let's say $100,000, and you say, okay, $100,000, and for Amber Shield, most of that was her money, probably about 80% of it.
I think if I remember, it was either 75 or 80,000 was her money. that she
Right.
put
So
in.
70. Let's say
And
75.
this is all public information. You can go to the Lieutenant Governor's financial disclosure website and find out to the penny how much each candidate spent and who contributed to their campaigns.
So, and this is actually most relevant for Scott Cuthbertson. Okay, so Scott is on the economic
EDC Utah, Economic Development Corporation of Utah, which is essentially an NGO, non-government organization that works directly with the governor's office of economic development and is in part funded by the state.
So let's take his number. I think he was more like 70. Did you say
70 to 75,000? I don't remember.
70 to
exactly.
75. And what would you guess was his money? About half?
The money he put in? Oh,
Yes.
no, he didn't put half in.
Okay.
Family members did, but not him
Okay.
personally.
Okay. So
He put some in.
okay.
And I don't remember the exact
so
numbers,
let's say it was 10 grand. Okay. Now,
All in
as a
his loans,
state,
by the way.
as a state, yeah, so we get paid back.
Yeah.
Um, if he's able to raise money.
Mhm.
So as a state senator, okay, what you get paid is, what was it? What did you tell me?
It's like
$350?
$285 a day.
So let's say $300 a day.
6
Okay.
weeks in session, so 6 weeks at 5 times, so
6 weeks total?
30, yeah, 6 weeks in the legislative session, generally. That doesn't count special sessions. This is the regular session, so 5 days a week for 6 weeks.
So it's 30 days.
30 days during the regular, and then
and-
probably another, let's take a stab at 3 weeks. Let's say 3 weeks, another 15 days total throughout the year. If there's
So we got a total of 45 days. You're getting paid. This is what you're getting paid, everybody. So you're getting paid $13,500 a year to be like a House rep or a state senator.
Mhm.
Okay, leaving aside any kind of per diem that you get paid so that you can cover your
The
hotel
rule
bills.
is if you're within 100 miles radius of the capital, you don't get a per diem.
Right.
If you are out of that boundary, you get, I think it was 100 or 120 a day. I don't
But
recall.
even leaving that aside, because that's like money that goes in and out, and it usually probably goes against the state legislator. 13,500. Now I'm
Mhm.
going to put this in perspective for our listeners. 13,500 is what I used to make when I was teaching skiing at Snowbird and selling skis, and that was that includes my selling of skis. That was like back in 1992. So I'd sell atomic skis, and I would be a ski instructor, and included my tips, and that's about what I made. And that was a long time ago.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
So they don't
This
make
is
much money.
this is a rounding error. I mean, it's a rounding. So why do people put so much money into a campaign to basically, like in Amber Shields' case, she put in about
Call it 100.
call it 100.
Well,
Probably 80 of it
of
is
her own. Yeah.
her money. I mean, what's the point? There has to be another motivation. I don't think it's altruism. I
No,
really
it's
don't.
not. In some cases, it might be. In
Well,
rare,
like in
instances.
Trump's case, it is, because like he just got shot at and he doesn't need to do this,
No.
and he gives away his salary,
Yeah.
and
No.
his company has lost money when he was president.
His company did, but actually now he's richer than he was when he started because of Truth Social when it went public.
Right, when it went public.
Yeah.
But that was a separate business deal.
Right.
True, you could argue that, but point is going back to Scott Cuthbertson, who's in EDC, Utah. I believe that he does not have to resign his job at EDC, Utah,
Even though it's conflict
it's
of interest.
clearly a conflict of interest,
Mhm.
which is something that you pointed out to me, and I've pointed it out to the party senior party officials.
What did they think?
They went, "Oh yeah, you're right. It is a problem. We've got to do something about that."
They should.
Oh no, they
He's going to
absolutely
be voting to fund his own company, which pays him.
should. Right.
That it's not his company; it's the company he's the CEO of.
It's almost like Joe Biden when he gets paid by the Chinese and the Ukrainians and the Turkmenistan.
Well, imagine
and,
getting a
and the
vote
Russians.
to vote for your own salary coming from third party, in this case, the public.
You know, Steve, I would vote for the benefit of the state. Actually, what I would do if I were in that position, I either I wouldn't run or I would recuse myself.
You know, he's going to have to recuse himself, and this isn't about bash Scott Cuthbertson, although I think
No, but it's to say, what is the money?
What's the motivation?
Does it even make sense?
Well, and I pointed these. I mean, I went in, I looked at who was given money, what types of people, realtors, real estate developer after real estate developer after real estate developer, and to someone that is going to be tied to Smart City, the prison real estate site, and other uh, opportunities that he's going to have to make money off of this position.
Mhm.
And so you want to ask about a motive. I'm not saying I don't know him personally, but if
But there's also some other examples that Chris gave, through this whole process. There were people that won outright, and they were the convention nominee county. A couple, like there was Fred Cox, not related to
Fred Hay-
Spencer,
oh yeah,
but and
thank
a
God
couple
for him.
others, Ken Ivory.
Yeah,
They both won outright, and then they had to spend another 10 grand. They spent 2 or 3 grand just getting through the
convention.
getting through the convention, yes. And then to get through the primary, they had to pay like 2 or 3 times that.
Yeah,
And
and
then
that's a
on top of
minimum.
it-
I mean, that's like
And then on
minimum.
top of that, their opponent, I mean, one example, they spent like 40 grand, 30 grand, and outsped Fred Cox, for example, 5-1.
Mhm.
So that to me is the fundamental flaw. That's why we end up with a Spencer Cox, because if people had to actually go once a quarter to sit and do the meetings, the quarterly meetings, and then go to and the thing that you would be doing, it would be probably another meeting on top of that per quarter or per month. I think it's like one meeting per month. You basically you're spending a lot of time, and then you're also talking with all the delegates. You're figuring out who is going to support the Republican Party and try to get good candidates in there. And it's a lot of time.
What is a good candidate? Somebody with a lot of money?
No,
That's the good candidate.
a good candidate to me is, well, my definition of a good candidate doesn't mean necessarily that they're going to be electable.
Well, that's big because,
But I do think,
by the way, all this is aside from the fact that they cheat.
yes,
We're having this discussion making the assumption, here are the reasons why, even though we know they cheat. And by the way, we are going to prove that. We're in process of that, and we're recruiting for that. And I will openly say that.
Yes, we are.
But that we'll cover that topic another day on what we're doing, and it's an ongoing effort. And quite honestly, Roy, that's why you and I ran, was not because we're interested in being a politician, but because we're interested in having the people, and this is a people's nation, elect their representatives, and not selected by the system and the powers that be. And that's what's happening. That's why
agree.
I ran. And I know that's why you are.
I agree. And then I have since evolved in my thinking. That's the primary reason. The secondary reason is, just like people talk about the administrative state and the deep state at the federal level, it happens here at the state level. So you have 80, 90%, 90% of the people in our area here do not want the gondola, do not want the state to spend tax dollars to develop this really expensive transportation system
and yet
it got approval. Yeah. Why did it get approval? Because you've got UDOT, which is, those are not elected officials. They want to run the project. They want to do the project. Why not increase the size of their department? Why wouldn't they want to do that?
Well, not only that, we had people on the program that told us that they happen to have inside knowledge that this was going to be the preferred methodology of transportation by UDOT, and some of them happened to go up there and buy some of the land, didn't they?
Well, and that's true. And then the second thing
that's
is
a pretty good big
but
incentive.
again, what's happening here, and the canyon is just one example. The gondola is just one example.
Yeah.
You have unelected people who get to push a project that would benefit the people that work at UDOT because it makes their job bigger, et cetera, et cetera. They get a bigger budget, all sorts of really cool things for them. And then they're working with our state legislators who then say, okay, I don't have to please my constituents. I can vote for this and it'll benefit me because I'm going to earn money on the real estate side. And
I think we're talking about a few of them. I don't know how we were given some names.
It's a few that are very influential.
Very influential. And it's up to those elected officials to hold the bureaucrats in line. And
and why would they do that if they're going to benefit from it? And it's the same thing that happens. I mean, the war in Ukraine, was really the politicians, the neocons. There's a lot of people on Democrat and Republicans that get significant amount of money for their campaigns to basically support the war in Ukraine. We're going to spend our tax dollars to then buy equipment that's going to then go to contractors, and it's going to send those material to Ukraine, and to allow Ukrainian men to get killed. And it's for the profit of, it benefits the people whose donors are these large military industrial contractors. And the gondola is just one example. It's obviously on a much, much, much smaller scale, but it happens here.
It's making people millions of dollars here.
The other thing is, I was thinking about it, not just here, but I've been thinking about it for a little bit of time. I tried to get that range, that rifle range, the shooting range up Parley's Canyon, that's across the street, across Route 80 from Mountain Dell. And we offered to lease it. We offered to clean it up. We offered everything. And it was.
Is that state owned?
It is. The land is owned by Salt Lake City Water Department.
Okay.
Public Utilities and Water Department. Okay. It had been there for 50 years. And the woman that runs Salt Lake City Water Department, her name is Laura Briefer, said, I don't want it up there. Even though we said, here, we'll save you, the city, a huge amount of money because we'll clean it up. We will clean it up. We will maintain it. Okay. And it's a shooting area for police officers, the security up at Hogle Zoo, all these different things. Yeah. And they were like, no, lead in a watershed. And I understand that, and also fire. And I understand both those arguments. However, we did the testing. There's no lead that's migrating down into the Mountain Dell Reservoir. That's garbage. They made it up. Okay, we did the studies. They made it up. Okay, and there's nothing that we can do. And Aaron Mendenhall was, just said, look, I don't like guns, so we're not gonna.
That falls within Salt Lake City's boundaries. I know it's the county, but
it's actually Salt Lake City's property.
Oh.
So my point is that and I brought hundreds of people, to these Salt Lake City commissioner meetings to talk about this. And they just overrode it.
Because of their personal agenda.
Because their personal agenda. That's another thing. And going to our election integrity stuff, there's a bunch of people who I think are willfully blind, who say our elections are perfect, and I think they're using them to their advantage, cheating. Again, a bigger conversation. But you and I have spoken with quite a few politicians who know that there's a problem, but don't want to stick their hand up because they know that they're going to get blown out by the system.
And others yet that are totally oblivious to what it is to even have an election, much less what's involved with it. And these are people that are charged with certifying it, and they don't even know what it is.
They don't even know.
They don't even know the categories of voter.
They don't even know what they're supposed to be certifying.
They don't even know what they're supposed to be certifying. And,
right. It's all just a game.
And then, especially in 2020, you were labeled a conspiracy theorist if you even mentioned it. Although now I think that it's the majority of both Republicans and Democrats believe that there is, in fact, cheating in our election. And I've actually been, and there's so many things we could talk about, Roy, with what's going on, having gone through the primary, the caucus and convention primary process again, and then what's happened since then. I mean, the signature gathering company is under investigation. Cox won't turn over his signatures for verification. This is all public record that's being held with him.
Actually, you know what's interesting? So going back to your comment about the Republican Party as a private organization. Check, true. This primary, including the signatures, was run by the state for the benefit of a private party. Those data, all the data, the signatures, everything belongs to the Republican Party.
Interesting.
And Chris is going on the warpath.
Again, Chris Null. Yeah.
Chris Null is going on the warpath to get those data.
But he can only get it for Salt Lake County.
Yeah, but he's fighting the fight here, and he's getting the other GOP chairs in the other counties to step up as well.
And I hope they do. I truly do.
Yep.
It's questionable whether.
And this is something that I've learned, okay, through this whole process, the last 4 or 5 years, is the Republican Party, and I don't think a lot of people really appreciate it. The Republican Party is very different from the elected officials. If I were to win my House district,
you'd be ostracized up there.
Well, I would be ostracized, but I want to go back to that because of what makes a good candidate. But all my responsibilities, my role and responsibilities within the Salt Lake County Republican Party, I'd have to resign them. I'd have to resign everything. Okay. Would make me sad a little bit because I've gotten, involved and I know a lot of the people and so on.
Well, let me ask you this.
They don't want me to do that because the party is really separate from the elected officials.
Let me ask you this question, Roy. Honestly, if you got in up there, do you think you could do more good than if you were to stay in your position now?
Okay, good question. Because there's really two different.
Quite honestly, they've been trying to recruit me to one of these similar positions within the party,
right?
Which I'm very strongly considering, because we need good, honest people there. Yeah, I can say I'm relatively good and fairly honest. I want to do the right thing.
Well, I want to go back to what makes a good candidate.
Okay.
Okay.
But can you answer that question?
And I'm going to answer that question in the context of what makes a good candidate. What makes a good candidate, in my mind, is somebody who is going to step up and push, for example, our election law changes that we want, independent of whether he's in the in crowd up there at the state legislature and is going to be able to get it through. Somebody has to carry the water to push it, and even if you fail, you've got to try, because as you said, you can't. The way to make these changes is we're going to have multiple shots on goals, and we're going to have to put pressure from every angle that we possibly can. So if I were there, I would do that. I would. Okay, independent of whether I would be on the in crowd or not.
No, I can tell you,
I
you
would
wouldn't
do
be
that.
on the in-crowd.
And that's fine. I don't really care. I would still, committee assignments, all sorts of stuff. I'd be trying to push it. I'd be there. They'd have to listen to me. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That to me, somebody who's willing to stand up for the principles of the Republican Party, if you actually go through the principles, it actually lines up with everything that we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That's part one. Part two, I would also try to get SB 54 undone. I would try and do that. I'd be on the inside working with the guys on the outside to try and get it done.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I might be a one-term guy, but it doesn't matter. I don't care.
So
Okay.
we're going to come back to that. We're going to make pin Roy down and tell him after we give the numbers out again.
Go ahead, give the numbers out.
We're going to give the numbers out again, and then we're going to pin Roy down and have him answer the question. Can he do more good within the system as a state legislature or in his current position as an East Side Ledge chair? So we are the Battle Station. That's our new name for our podcast. Steve Aste and Roy Piskadlo on KMMU podcast radio. We hear that there actually will be a radio station at some point. KMMU.org, MainStreetMediaUtah.com. You can also find us on Rumble. Just type in KMMU, and on Twitter and YouTube as well. And our call-in number, it's our first time back. We don't know who's listening, but in case you want to call in for the last few minutes, we're signing off at 5:30 today. We have an event, but the number to call in, if you're interested, 385-899-2134. So we're going to get back to Roy and ask him to answer the question as directly as he can. And I know it's speculation, but does he believe he would do better, more good in affecting the change we want to see within the House of Representatives here in Utah, or if he remains a member? What is your title here for the people so they know?
I am the Eastern Region Chair, House District Chair for the Salt Lake County.
Okay.
So I have House Districts 32, 33, 34, and 41 underneath me.
Your umbrella. Okay. So in his role within the party or as a state House of Representatives member.
Okay, so we're trying to affect change in two different ways. One, within the Republican Party, and two, at the state legislature. Okay, the big things at the state legislature are the gondola, which goes to spending, SB 54, to release the Republican Party and Democrat Party.
Well, I'd add to that, a big category is this withheld that we.
Yes, well, it goes to the whole election.
Revamping the election system altogether.
It needs to go to paper ballots, in person, etc.
Right.
That's the only way to go. But getting those things and undoing SB 54, the gondola, and the SB 54, the gondola, and election integrity. Now, within the Republican Party, I'm one voice. So we've got a Republican Party, my role and responsibility within the Republican Party, and then the stuff that I'm doing with you on election integrity.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The stuff I'm doing with you on election integrity, I would not stop doing. So I could be in the state legislature and do that.
Right. But specifically in your role.
So my point is now all we're really doing is we're looking at my role in the Republican Party. Can I affect these changes that we've been talking about within the Republican Party more effectively, or as a state legislature?
Right.
I'd have to say I vote for state legislature, because what I'm doing with you and other people on this election integrity and proving the fraud, That's separate from the Republican Party.
Yeah, that
completely.
doesn't have anything
It
to do
doesn't
with
have
the
anything
party.
to do with it.
This is
So that's why I think I can be more effective on the overall stuff that we're doing, even if I am up at the state legislature, because all I'd be doing is I wouldn't be giving up the stuff I'm doing with you.
well, of course not. But you would be giving up your authority within the party
Which is fine.
and
I don't need
influence
it.
within the party
That's okay.
itself.
That's okay.
hmm
That's okay. I don't need it.
And yet, you've used this argument with me. They're trying to recruit me, by the way, into a position within the party,
But you
which
don't
makes sense,
But you
by the
don't.
way.
But you don't have an alternative. You're not.
No,
You're
I
not a
don't
state
have an
senator.
alternative anymore. But the argument that I was given, and it makes sense, we need good people in those positions within the party to affect the change because they have certain voting rights, they can appoint certain people to certain positions.
The more people that we have like you and me in these positions,
Right.
the more likely it is that we can push the state party to get out of SB 54
hmm
and to try and push to, sue the state if need be to get out of having to do a primary.
hmm
Okay. Now, if I were a state legislator, I'd be trying to push that on the other side. And right now, all the people that are there in those seats, most of them don't want to change
No.
the system. Why? Because they're the incumbents and they're the ones with the money. Okay. And the reason they are the incumbents and they get reelected over and over and over again is because they get the donations, like Scott Cuthbertson, and Amber Sheila, who's just writing a check for herself, basically. And it goes back to what we were saying before. Why would you do that? Why would you do that? What is, unless you're just altruistic, like an Elon Musk or something like that, or a Donald Trump,
Well, unless you
You
have
just
money to
wouldn't-
just literally burn.
which, and not every, I would say that
It's a,
the
it's
best
a
talent,
prestigious position to some people, and they need that.
yeah, but you only do that if you don't value the money. And I personally can't do that given my current financial situation. I'm not going to burn a lot of money. There's no way.
But it's amazing the amount of people that are willing to do that.
I understand that. And then you got to ask, what is the economic motivation when you're putting $100,000 into a Senate seat?
That's going to pay you back
State Senate
roughly
seat.
13 a year.
13 a year.
So how many years that would take? 6 years?
You could say it's altruism, but I don't think it necessarily is. And you and I have met many candidates that do not have that kind of money, like Phil Lyman,
Right.
okay, like Sarah Montez, who's running for House District 32. I mean, she's only 32 years old and she's got a young family. She doesn't make a lot of money. She's not going to be able to put a huge amount of dough into that race.
In a House
And I
race,
think- and I
you've got
think
to
she's-
put 35,
I think
40K in.
I think she's a great candidate. I think she would support and stand up for things, and do that, because $13,000 is not going to make or break her. But it also isn't, she doesn't have the kind of money to put in to kind of maybe win the seat. So going back to, would I be more effective in the things that you and I are trying to do? One, make the Republican Party better so that we can, make these changes here, but also having somebody on the other side who is an incumbent, who is there in the office, being able to fight for this thing. I think I'd actually be more effective.
Well, I really hope you get elected, Roy, and we all need anybody that's listening. If they want to help Roy's campaign, he'll be setting his website will be coming out soon, I'm assuming.
Soon, because I've got to get Dwayne's help.
Dwayne got one more thing to do, and
not that he doesn't have a lot to do already.
And also, I mean, you've got to buy some signage at a minimum, I would think, and
and
then
knock on a lot of doors.
Get a lot of volunteers to go talk to people about why they should vote for Roy. Why should they vote for you?
Because I am going to represent Republican principles in anything.
What is
everything.
that?
Uh,
Well, I mean, but seriously, what are the Republican principles? Because it seems that the Republicans we have running our state don't seem to know what they are.
it is to support the Constitution and
That's a novel
and
concept.
and
You're called an extremist if you do that now in this state, it seems.
yeah, and basically give responsibility and push responsibility and authority down to the individuals, empower the individual. That's the way I look at it. I mean, because right now the way what I see is people like Cox saying, to, for example, Cottonwood Heights, where we live here, they're like, if you don't figure out how to get low income housing into your neighborhoods, which it would be
He's
a
gonna do
freaking
it for
disaster,
you.
he's going to do it for us. It's like, go screw yourself. Really?
Pound sand.
Pound sand.
Pound sand, Cox.
Yep. So
Anyway,
Anyway.
we got
so
like 15 minutes because we're going to sign off at 5:30 today. If you're listening, give us a call, 385-899-2134. Roy and I are just getting warmed up. We
getting back into the swing of
getting
it.
back into the swing of things. There were so many things that we could talk about at length, ad nauseum. I want to talk about what's happening to Frank Mylar, what's happening to Phil Lyman, Trent Staggs. I've not heard a lot about him since the primaries were over. So many things, and then the assassination attempt, and the feeling I got from watching some of the stuff, not only Saturday, the assassination, but then how Trump responded to it, and the sentiment that I kind of felt like I felt it through the people at the convention and others that I talked to around here, and what it means for the country. And was it a setup? Was it really a lone wolf? There's so many things that need to be answered right now. And, my hat's off to this Trump guy, man. He truly is.
I couldn't have done what he did.
Who knows when you're in the moment, but just not only that, but just from the minute he announced in 2015, it's been one unrelenting attack after the other. This lawfare and Russia, and on and on and on and on. Why would you put yourself through that?
I don't know, and I don't know whether. I don't think I'd have, even prior to the assassination attempt, I'm not sure that I would have had the gumption that he did. I mean, he just walked directly into the fire. I mean, they did like a $500 million fine on him. I mean, it'll get overturned, but that guy is going to be spending, I'm guessing, probably close to $100 million, $70 million just on legal fees on all the different things that he's fighting, and it's all getting crushed. It's absolutely insane, and then to have somebody shoot you in the head. I mean,
small thing.
A small thing.
Yeah.
I mean,
just
there's
so many unanswered questions about that. I mean, how does a 20-year-old kid get in that position? And now the things I've heard and the cover-ups that seemingly are happening, and
the
now
Secret Service is not coming clean.
No, they're not.
They're not coming clean at all.
It's the deep state. I'm convinced of that.
Kind of looks a little bit like JFK.
JFK with Lyndon B. Johnson. I happened to read up on some of his history recently, and that was a bad dude. And I mean, look at the people that were assassinated just under his watch. It was both Kennedys, and then Martin Luther King, and then there was somebody else. It was
Malcolm X.
Malcolm X, all under Lyndon B. Johnson,
Uh-huh.
who, by the way, fairly recently, when he initially ran for I think it was the state legislature in Texas in '48.
It was actually the Senate. It was the primary.
The guy that cheated was one of the people instrumental in cheating. Has come forward now, fairly recently, and said, "Yeah, I cheated on his behalf."
And the quid pro quo was to get a Supreme Court justice on the Supreme Court.
Yeah, that's right. Which eventually he had to resign due to another scandal.
That's right. The Supreme Court justice.
Yeah, and so this guy started the cheating at his local level, got all the way to president.
Well, his nickname, it was 250 votes.
Landslide. Yeah, it was
Landslide Lyndon.
Yeah, Landslide Lyndon. I'm gonna here and now. We're gonna call him Landslide Cox. How about that?
That's good.
Landslide Cox.
I heard a description of Biden. It's like Biden is as corrupt as Lyndon Baines Johnson, but dumber.
Yeah, yeah. He's pretty dumb. He's dumb. He was dumb.
Even before his
somebody sent. I'm going to read it. This was pretty funny. Somebody sent this. I think I actually sent it to you too, Roy. It says Trump almost assassinated, and he still gets off the stage better than Biden does.
Oh yeah,
that's true.
That's true. Even although, did you hear he was saying, my shoes, I need to get my shoes back. How did he get his shoes knocked off when the Secret Service jumped on him? I
kind of thought that maybe his feet were hurting and he took his shoes off before he started his speech.
I don't think so.
And he doesn't seem like the kind of person that would wear loafers.
No, he would not. They would be lace up.
Yeah,
I am sure. And they got pushed off his feet. So anyway,
when they first said, I thought he said speech, but I got to get my speech. Mm-hmm. But it was his shoes.
It was his shoes. Well, as Dwayne was suggesting, we could do a whole thing on the assassination, because as you know, on that, why don't we do that on our next show on the assassination attempt?
Well, and by that time, more of the dust will have settled, and maybe more of the facts will have come out. But
I heard that Mike Johnson asked for the resignation of the woman that's running the DEI hire, that's running the Secret Service. And he did that this morning.
And what was it she said? I'm not going to resign.
That was a day or so ago.
Okay.
He's asked for her resignation this morning. Speaker Johnson did.
And what kind of authority do you going to really have?
He doesn't have any authority. He's just asking for a resignation. Look, in the end, it's Mayorkas who gets to say yes or no.
Yeah, well, a lot of heads should roll over this. For me, what I can tell so far, it was a clear attempt by the deep state to get rid of Trump.
No,
before the convention, we've all known that they're willing to do anything and everything to keep him out of the presidency. We've known that,
and they're going to do it again. I think they're going to try again.
They might.
And just as part of this, they announced that it was really Iran that was.
I know.
That's so much BS.
No, I mean,
they're doing that to create a wag the dog. Say, oh, it was Iran that did it. Now we're going to go to war with Iran.
Well, I think that I had heard. I think it was an article that you had sent me about. That was the plan, to assassinate him, blame Iran, and then divert all the attention to go into war with Iran.
Exactly.
And, we're being lied to, folks, at all different kinds of levels. And we as a people need to stand up, and we need to take, in our case here, our state back to the people, get these bad actors like Cox and others
Clean
to
up our elections.
clean up our elections, and actually be a great state. And we can see other people are working to do the same thing in other states and in this country. And, we talk about why does Trump do this? How does he keep going through all this pain he's, inflicted upon him, to raids of his home and false accusations of being taken to court and literally being shot at and hit in the head with a bullet. I get discouraged when we don't get immediate results and we don't get our data out quick enough to do the research on it. Say, oh, what's the use?
And you start yelling about Dwayne not to get this stuff
Dwayne,
done.
get that.
I'm going to now remind you. Thank you for that one. That's a good one.
And so, I know how easy it is to get discouraged, but I can't imagine it at that level. You say to yourself, I want to do something, I want to try, but what's the use? Nobody cares really. People are stupid.
It comes down to looking at what that individual, going back to what is a good candidate or not. One is, I think, the Republican ideals, which we talked about, but then what do they stand to gain versus what do they stand to lose as a candidate? Because, when we went to Mike Carey's thing a couple days ago, I met somebody there who ran for a House seat and then resigned. And I said, well, why did you resign? Did you talk to that guy? I can't remember which House seat it was. He said he resigned because he was getting death threats.
Here in Utah,
he was getting death threats. Now,
just recently, this happened to him.
Me personally, and again, this was after Trump, and we all like to think that we're the hero that Trump is.
You wouldn't know that.
You just don't know. Yeah. But I look at it as if somebody were to send me death threats and things by email and so on, I'd be like, frickin' bring it.
Yeah, what if they start saying that about your family?
And that's what happened with Steve Christiansen.
Yeah, it's that's a whole new.
I think for me,
when you start putting innocent people
in the line of fire, and you know what? Trump is doing that with Melania and his kids and everything. I mean, they're all under as Biden said, in the bullseye. Just a couple days before this attempt. But
did you hear this, Roy? I heard today. Biden and Trump talked, and I think it was that night. And one of the first questions he asked, "Why did you turn your head?"
I think it was that link that I sent you.
Why did you turn your head? You've got to be kidding me. Why would he is really an idiot. Biden.
He really is.
He is really you're having a conversation with a guy that and he knows who's doing it. It's the deep state. Oh, yeah. And here he's being asked on that very first call, why did you turn your head? You dumbass, we wanted to kill you. Why did you turn your head at that moment?
Going back to threatening my family, here's another reason why I'm a good candidate. I don't have any kids at home. And my wife's last name is a different last name. So what are they going to do? They're going to threaten Doug and Bolt?
They could threaten anybody they wanted.
They can, but they threaten Doug and Bolt. I'm not.
Those are his dogs, by the way.
Yeah, Doug and Bolt are my dogs. I mean, they're good dogs, but I don't know.
There's a lot to talk about, Roy. I somehow had it in my mind that we make a bigger dent than we did, but we're back on the air. We are very committed to,
and we're grateful that Dwayne is going to allow us back on the air.
He's
a real friend, and he's a real trooper. The amount of work that guy does for a lot of candidates that you guys would know if you heard their names. Me going forward, hopefully,
and me in the past,
and all we have to do is get him ice cream cones, and he's just like he does all this.
He likes a good steak once in a while.
He does like a good steak
and hot dog. He likes He likes a good hot dog. But,
Yeah.
we are pushing forward. We are going to get to the end of, get to the bottom of the cheating in Utah. We're going to get proof of that. We're working diligently on that. It has not happened in the time frame that I had hoped and actually thought, but we are going to do it. We are not going to give up. As many of as you that see this, get a hold of us, and we'll give our information out at another time. But we are very resolute in our effort to make the difference that we can make right here. And that's what we're doing. I wish I could snap my fingers and change the world, kind of. That gets into that whole free will thing, and we won't go there. But it's going to take a lot of hard work and a consistent, sustained effort. And so anybody that wants to get involved with that, please, I'll give my email, aste4utah@gmail.com, ASTE, the number 4, Utah@gmail.com. Send me an email, and we'll put you on a list to help our effort. Anything else you want to say, Roy, before we wrap it up here?
No, I think what we'll do is next week we'll talk about the assassination attempt, and then probably the week after that, let's explain to people what we're doing on across those 7 counties, so that we can get volunteers to go and visit addresses. But we're also going to need some money.
We're going to need money. We're going to need some people that are good with advertising, marketing, good with Twitter, YouTube, and these kind of things, because we need to win the war of public opinion as well. And it's a multifaceted effort. We've been working on it for quite a while. It's a good plan, and we'll lay that all out. And those of you that are already involved with it, thank you. And with that,
Like Dwayne.
And then Dwayne, he's the man. He's the monster behind the scene, man. He deserves a medal, and he won't give it to himself, so we're giving it to him.
Yeah, we're going to get him another ice cream.
We'll get him an ice cream one of these days, maybe from Handles.
Hey,
we need to get them as a sponsor. We're going to keep mentioning them.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll get some free ice cream out of it.
Well,
or is that quid pro quo?
Exactly.
For
at
ice cream.
At least for Dwayne.
Yeah. So anyway, well, thank you all. We look forward to seeing you again next week. Same bat time, same bat channel, 4 to 6 on Wednesday.
You guys are embarrassing me. Stop.
Okay, we'll stop now.